This Ferrari Enzo was worth $2 million. Now it's covered in dust, abandoned in a parking lot. But here's the real question: who would walk away from a car like this? And why? What if I told you that this isn't the only one? All over the world, luxury supercars, Lamborghinis, Bugattis, Rolls-Royces are being left behind. Some in the middle of the desert, others locked away in forgotten warehouses. And no one is coming back for them. Some of these cars belong to billionaires. Others were involved in crimes. And some, well, their owners simply disappeared. Today, we uncover the shocking truth behind the world's most expensive abandoned supercars and the secrets they hold. How do cars worth millions just get left behind? The answers will shock you. Let's begin. Supercars are built for speed, power, and luxury. But owning one isn't just about the price tag. It's about the cost of keeping it running. And that's where the problem begins. Most people think that once you buy a Lamborghini or a Bugatti, that's it. But the truth is, these cars cost a fortune to maintain. Even the wealthiest owners struggle with the expenses. Let's start with something simple: an oil change. For a regular car, you might pay $50. For a Bugatti, try $20,000. And if the engine has problems, that's over $100,000 for a new one. That's the price of an entire house in some places. Take this Bentley Mulsanne, for example. Brand new, it was worth over $300,000. But one major repair, just one, was going to cost the owner $50,000. Instead of fixing it, they just walked away. Now, imagine you own a Lamborghini. You love the way it drives, the way it sounds. But suddenly, the clutch goes bad. Guess what? That's another $15,000 gone. And if your tires need changing, that's another $5,000. The costs keep adding up, and for some owners, it just doesn't make sense anymore. When repairs cost as much as a brand new car, many people just give up. That's why you see Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Bentleys left to rot in parking lots, warehouses, and even on the side of the road. They become too expensive to keep and too difficult to sell. It's like owning a pet tiger. It's amazing at first. But when it becomes too much to handle, you don't know what to do with it anymore. And here's another problem. Some of these cars belong to people who went broke overnight. They had money, they lived the high life, but when their fortunes disappeared, so did their ability to take care of these cars. So instead of paying for storage or selling them at a huge loss, they just leave them behind. Even millionaires run out of money. And when they do, their cars are often the first thing they abandon. But financial problems are just one reason. In some cases, these cars are left behind because their owners are running from something much bigger. Let's move on to the next shocking reason why supercars get abandoned. Now imagine you're a millionaire who just bought a Ferrari. At first, it's all fun and excitement. You take it for long drives, show it off, enjoy the incredible power. But one day, something goes wrong. Maybe the transmission starts acting up, or the brakes need a full replacement. You take it to the dealership, and they hand you a repair bill for $50,000. That's when reality hits. Some owners don't want to keep throwing money into a car that constantly demands more. If the repair costs too much or takes too long, they simply leave it behind. In places like Dubai, where abandoned supercars are a common sight, many of these vehicles were left by wealthy expatriates who couldn't afford repairs or who had financial troubles. Since Dubai has strict laws about unpaid debts, some car owners leave the country entirely, abandoning their cars at airports and in parking lots, never to return. One example is this Bentley Mulsanne, now sitting in a dusty lot, forgotten by its owner. When it was brand new, it was worth over $300,000, a luxury vehicle built for the elite. But when it needed a $50,000 repair, the owner decided it wasn't worth it. Rather than paying, they just left it there. The same thing happens to Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Rolls-Royces. Take this Lamborghini, for instance. It was once a dream car, a symbol of success. But when the clutch wore out, something that happens faster in high-performance cars, the repair bill was over $15,000. Instead of fixing it, the owner abandoned it in a parking garage, where it has been sitting ever since. The truth is, many people who buy these cars are not lifelong supercar enthusiasts. Some are just looking for status symbols, and when they realize how expensive it is to keep one running, they quickly lose interest. And even for those who can afford it, priorities change. Maybe they get a new car, move to another country, or simply don't care anymore. Over time, these cars are left to decay, sitting in forgotten lots, covered in dust and bird droppings. Some owners don't even bother selling them because in some cases, finding a buyer for a broken supercar is just as difficult as fixing it. And then there are those who lost everything. Some of these abandoned cars belong to people who were once incredibly wealthy, living in mansions, driving the best cars money could buy. But fortunes change. And when their businesses collapse or their investments fail, these cars are often the first things to go. It happens more often than you'd think. A millionaire one day, bankrupt the next. Suddenly, they can't afford to keep up with the payments, or they simply disappear to avoid debts, leaving their luxury cars behind. Rows of abandoned Bentleys, Porsches, and even McLarens sit in impound lots, waiting for owners who will never come back. Owning a supercar is a dream for many people, but the reality is much harsher than most imagine. It's not just about buying the car, it's about maintaining it, repairing it, and paying for every little thing that goes wrong. And when the cost becomes too much, even the most beautiful and expensive cars get left behind. But financial problems are just one reason why supercars end up abandoned. In some cases, these cars weren't left behind because of money problems, but because their owners were running from something much bigger. Not every abandoned supercar has a legal owner. Some of them were stolen or smuggled across borders, only to be left behind when things didn't go as planned. Supercars are valuable, and that makes them a prime target for thieves. Some criminals steal these cars to sell them on the black market, while others smuggle them into different countries to avoid paying taxes. But when authorities get involved, these cars are seized and left sitting in impound lots or hidden warehouses for years. One shocking case involved a rare McLaren P1, a car worth over $1 million. It was found hidden in a warehouse in China, untouched for years. This McLaren was part of a billion-dollar smuggling ring, where criminals brought in luxury cars without paying import taxes. Authorities eventually cracked down on the operation, seizing dozens of high-end vehicles, including Ferraris, Bugattis, and Rolls-Royces. Since no one could legally claim them, they were left to gather dust, sitting in storage while courts decided what to do with them. Stolen supercars often end up in a similar situation. Thieves take them, change their license plates, and try to sell them off in underground markets. But when they realize how difficult it is to move a rare car without getting caught, they abandon it. Some are dumped in parking lots, others are hidden in garages, and some are even left in the middle of nowhere, miles away from civilization. In some cases, supercars are stolen for joyrides, only to be left behind once the thieves have had their fun. Police have found Lamborghinis and Ferraris abandoned on the side of the road, out of fuel, with no sign of the driver. In other cases, stolen luxury cars are shipped to different countries using fake documents. But when customs officers discover the fraud, the cars are seized and locked away. Some of these vehicles never return to their original owners, and without the right paperwork, they can't even be sold. But what if I told you that some of the most incredible abandoned supercars were found in places no one expected? Some hidden in barns, others buried underground. Up next, we reveal some of the strangest locations where abandoned supercars have been discovered. Take this Porsche Carrera GT, for example. When it first came out, it was one of the most expensive and advanced supercars ever made. But today, it sits in an open parking lot, unused and forgotten. The owner, who once paid over $400,000 for it, has long moved on to something newer and faster. And they're not the only one. All over the world, you can find supercars sitting in backyards, driveways, and even on the side of the road. left behind simply because they are no longer the latest and greatest. It's not just billionaires who do this. Car dealerships and collectors also contribute to the problem. When new models arrive, old stock can sit unsold for years. If a dealership can't find a buyer, some cars just sit there, losing value day by day. Some collectors, after buying dozens of cars, forget about the ones they no longer care about. And when that happens, even the most expensive supercars become nothing more than forgotten machines, left to rot. This is why you sometimes find Lamborghinis, McLarens, and Ferraris in shocking conditions. Engines seized, paint faded, interiors destroyed by time. To some people, a Ferrari from 10 years ago is still a dream car, but to those who own 5 or 6 of them, it's just old. Now that we know why supercars are abandoned, let's take a look at some of the most famous abandoned supercars ever found. From a forgotten Lamborghini in the desert to a Bugatti hidden in a barn for decades, these are some of the rarest cars that time left behind. The $2 million Ferrari Enzo left in Dubai. The Ferrari Enzo is one of the most legendary supercars ever made. With only 400 units built, owning one is like owning a piece of automotive history. Each Enzo was designed with Formula One technology, making it one of the fastest and most advanced cars of its time. But even a car this special couldn't escape being abandoned. This particular Enzo was found sitting in a dusty lot in Dubai, covered in thick layers of sand. Its once glossy red paint had faded, and the engine hadn't been started in years. How did such a valuable car end up like this? The story goes that its owner was a wealthy businessman who ran into legal trouble. In Dubai, unpaid debts can lead to serious consequences, including arrest. To avoid jail time, the owner fled the country, leaving behind his luxury cars, including this Enzo. For years, the car sat untouched, slowly decaying under the desert sun. Eventually, the government seized it, along with hundreds of other abandoned luxury cars. Some were auctioned off, while others remained locked away, waiting for a new owner. It's hard to believe that a $2 million Ferrari, a car that most people can only dream of owning, was left behind like an old piece of junk. But in the world of abandoned supercars, this is just the beginning. The Bugatti Veyron that collected dust in an airport parking lot. The Bugatti Veyron is one of the fastest and most expensive cars ever built. With a top speed of over 250 miles per hour and a price tag of $1.7 million, it's a car that only a handful of people in the world can afford. But even a car this rare and powerful couldn't escape being abandoned. In an airport parking lot, covered in layers of dust, sat a forgotten Bugatti Veyron. For years, it remained untouched, as if someone had simply parked it one day and never returned. The tires were deflated, the interior was coated in dust, and the once shiny paint had faded under years of neglect. But how does someone just leave behind $1 million supercar? There are a few theories. Some believe it was part of an insurance scam, an attempt to claim a loss on a car that wasn't really stolen. Others think the owner ran into financial or legal trouble and had to disappear quickly, leaving the car behind. And then there's the strangest theory of all, that the owner simply forgot about it. It sounds unbelievable, but for some ultra-rich car collectors, owning dozens of high-end vehicles is normal. With so many cars, it's possible that one was left behind and never thought about again. Whether it was an accident, a scam, or something else entirely, one thing is clear. This Veyron sat for years, waiting for an owner who never came back. The Koenigsegg Regera found in a shipping container. The Koenigsegg Regera is one of the rarest and most powerful supercars ever made. With only 80 units produced, each one is a masterpiece of engineering, combining insane speed with cutting-edge hybrid technology. So when one suddenly disappeared from a private collection, people immediately knew something wasn't right. For months, no one knew where it had gone. The owner, a wealthy car collector, had assumed it was being transported to another location. But when it never arrived, suspicions grew. Was it stolen? Had it been sold without the owner's knowledge? The mystery deepened until authorities uncovered a shocking truth. It had been hidden in a shipping container. Buried deep inside a warehouse, this multi-million-dollar supercar was sitting in complete darkness, covered in dust. It was later revealed to be part of a fraud case, where criminals had been smuggling luxury cars across borders to avoid taxes and launder money. For years, the car remained locked away, untouched and completely forgotten. When it was finally found, it was in near-perfect condition, as if time had stood still. The discovery of the Regera raised even more questions. Who was behind the operation? How many other stolen supercars were out there, hidden in warehouses and containers, waiting to be found? It's a mystery that still leaves many wondering just how many lost hypercars are yet to be uncovered. The forgotten Rolls-Royce Phantom in Hollywood. Hollywood is home to some of the richest and most famous people in the world. Expensive cars are everywhere, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys. But among them, sitting quietly under a layer of dust and leaves, was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Once the ultimate symbol of luxury, this car had been left outside for years, completely forgotten. What makes this story even crazier is who it once belonged to. A famous celebrity, whose name was once known worldwide. At one point, this Rolls-Royce was worth over $400,000, chauffeuring its owner to red carpet events and high-profile parties. But after a financial scandal, everything changed. The celebrity lost everything: money, houses, and even this car. Instead of selling it, they left it parked outside, where it slowly turned from a symbol of success to a forgotten relic. As time passed, people walking by barely noticed it anymore. Leaves piled up on the windshield, the once polished chrome became dull, and the luxurious interior started to crack from years of exposure. To most, it was just another abandoned vehicle on the streets of Hollywood. But to car enthusiasts, it was a heartbreaking sight. A car that once represented power and wealth, now left to decay like any other forgotten possession. And if you think that's shocking, wait until you see what was found deep in the desert. A Lamborghini buried in sand, completely forgotten by time. The Lamborghini Countach that was left in a barn for 30 years. The Lamborghini Countach is one of the most legendary supercars ever built. With its futuristic design and powerful V12 engine, it defined an entire generation of exotic cars. But while most Countachs are kept in pristine condition by collectors, one of them sat hidden in a dusty barn for 3 decades, completely forgotten. The story begins in the early 1980s, when a wealthy businessman purchased the Lamborghini brand new. At the time, the Countach was one of the most expensive and sought-after cars in the world, turning heads everywhere it went. But strangely, after driving it for just a few hundred miles, the owner mysteriously disappeared. No one knew what happened to him, and his prized Lamborghini was left behind, parked in the corner of a barn, untouched for years. For decades, the car remained hidden, covered in layers of dust, with its tires slowly deflating and its once bright paint fading under years of neglect. The barn itself started falling apart, with broken windows and rotting wooden beams. Yet inside, the Countach remained frozen in time. Unlike many abandoned supercars that suffer from exposure to the elements, this one was surprisingly well preserved. It had only 500 miles on the odometer, almost like it had never been driven. When it was finally discovered, car collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing. This wasn't just any Lamborghini Countach, it was an ultra-rare model, one of the last ever made, and in near original condition. Because of its rarity and untouched state, its value skyrocketed. What was once a forgotten relic in a barn was now worth over $3 million. The biggest mystery, however, was why the owner had left it behind. Did he run into financial trouble? Did he plan to come back for it but never got the chance? To this day, no one knows the full story. But one thing is certain: what was once a lost piece of automotive history is now one of the most valuable classic supercars in the world. Hidden supercar graveyards. Most people can't imagine leaving a Ferrari or a Lamborghini to rot, but in some parts of the world, entire junkyards are filled with abandoned luxury cars. These places, often hidden from the public, hold hundreds of forgotten supercars left behind for reasons that are sometimes shocking. Dubai's supercar graveyard. Dubai is known for its extreme wealth, but it's also home to one of the largest collections of abandoned luxury cars in the world. In this city, where supercars are as common as regular sedans, many high-end vehicles end up abandoned in parking lots, streets, and even in the middle of the desert. But why? One major reason is Dubai's strict financial laws. If someone takes out a loan to buy a car but can't pay it back, they can face legal trouble, even jail time. Rather than risk arrest, many owners, especially foreign workers, choose to flee the country, leaving their cars behind. As a result, impound lots and junkyards across Dubai are filled with abandoned Ferraris, Bentleys, and Lamborghinis, some still in perfect condition. Every year, authorities round up these abandoned vehicles, and many of them are auctioned off for a fraction of their original price. It's a strange reality. Some of the most desirable cars in the world left to collect dust simply because their owners couldn't afford to keep them. China's supercar graveyard. China also has its own hidden supercar graveyard, but the reason behind it is very different. Here, many of these luxury cars were seized by the government for unpaid taxes, smuggling, or fraud cases. Some were part of massive corruption scandals, where high-ranking officials secretly bought exotic cars using illegal money. Instead of being sold or returned to their owners, many of these seized vehicles are left sitting in warehouses or outdoor lots, slowly deteriorating. Rows of Ferraris, McLarens, and Rolls-Royces sit untouched, with weeds growing around them and paint peeling from years of exposure. Since these cars are often tied up in legal cases, they stay in limbo for years, never being driven again. Where do these cars go? After seeing all these abandoned supercars, one question remains. What happens to them? Some of these rare and expensive machines will never hit the road again. Left to rust in impound lots, junkyards, and hidden warehouses, they slowly decay, their engines never revving again. Others, however, are given a second chance. Governments auction off many of these vehicles at shockingly low prices, allowing lucky buyers to own a dream car for a fraction of its original cost. But not every car gets saved. Some stay trapped in legal battles for years, untouched and slowly falling apart. Then, there are the ones that simply vanish. Some abandoned supercars are bought and restored by collectors, while others are scrapped for parts, disappearing completely. It's a strange fate for cars that were once symbols of wealth and power, now forgotten, left behind, and in some cases completely destroyed. But which abandoned supercar shocked you the most? Was it the $2 million Ferrari Enzo sitting in an impound lot, the Bugatti left in an airport parking garage, or the hidden supercar graveyards filled with forgotten luxury? Let us know in the comments below. And if you could save just one of these cars, which one would it be? If you enjoyed this video and want to see more insane car mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you want a part 2, hit that like button. We'll bring you even more shocking stories of lost and forgotten supercars.